Welcome, dear listener, to the world asleep. Tonight, our path leads us across the waters of the Aegean Sea toward the island of Crete. Here, bathed in sunlight and surrounded by restless waves, rose the first great civilization of Europe, the Minoans. More than 4,000 years ago, they built palaces that glittered with frescoes, traded across distant seas, and told stories that would echo into myth. The Greeks who came after remembered them as the people of King Minos, of Daedalus and his Labyrinth, of the Minotaur hidden in shadowed halls. Yet even today, much of their life remains a mystery. Their language, called Linear A, has never been deciphered. Their end came suddenly, leaving questions still unanswered. The Minoans are history and legend entwined, their traces scattered in ruins, in myths, in the stones of Knossos, and in the sea itself. To dream of them is to dream of both truth and wonder, of what was and what may have been. Tonight, we will walk softly through their world, letting history and myth guide us into a labyrinth of time. Chapter 1. The Island of Crete. Crete, the cradle of the Minoan world, lies at the meeting point of seas. To the north stretches the Aegean, scattered with islands that shimmer like stepping stones toward Greece. To the south, the deep waters of the Libyan Sea open into the vastness of Africa. To the east, routes stretch towards Cyprus and the Levant. To the west, the waves roll onward to Italy. It is a place of crossroads, a bridge between continents, where cultures and currents have mingled for millennia. The island itself is long and mountainous, its spine a series of rugged ranges that rise sharply from the sea. Snow crowns these peaks in winter, feeding rivers that tumble down into valleys rich with olive groves and vineyards. The coastlines shift from rocky cliffs to soft sands, from hidden coves to open bays. To walk along Crete is to pass constantly between contrasts, high mountains and fertile plains, bright sunlight and deep caves, the whisper of waves and the silence of peaks. For the Minoans, this land was not backdrop, but foundation. The mountains were guardians and guides. The forests and fields provided food, timber, and herbs. The seas were both shield and highway, carrying their ships outward toward new horizons. Every feature of Crete shaped the life that grew upon it, and from this soil rose a civilization unlike any the world had seen before. The myths that cling to Crete are as enduring as its stones. The Greeks who came later told that here, on the slopes of Mount Ida, the infant Zeus was hidden in a cave to escape his father Cronus. Nurtured by nymphs, protected by the clashing shields of the Curetes, the god of thunder grew strong beneath the mountain's watch. Other tales spoke of Mount Dicte, where another cave cradled him in his infancy. These stories gave the island a sacred aura, a place where divinity itself had roots. The caves of Crete were not only mythic but sacred in the Minoan age. Archaeologists have found offerings deep within them, pottery, figurines, and ritual objects left in the darkness where stalactites drip and echoes linger. These caves, cool and silent, must have felt like thresholds between the human and the divine, places where prayers could travel into the unseen. The people of Crete lived in sunlight, but they honored the shadows too. From the mountains, life flowed outward. Terraces carved into slopes held olive trees, their silver-green leaves shimmering in the breeze, their fruit pressed into oil that became both food and trade. Vines bore grapes that ripened in the Mediterranean sun, producing wine carried in clay amphorae across the sea. Herds of goats grazed on rocky outcrops, their bells chiming faintly through the air. Sheep provided wool, spun into cloth that adorned Minoan frescoes in brilliant colour. The land sustained them, but the sea connected them. Crete's position made it a natural maritime power. From its ports, Minoan ships set sail toward Egypt, the Levant, and the Aegean islands. Their vessels were sleek and swift, built for trade, carrying not only goods, but ideas. Through these journeys, they exchanged with distant cultures, yet retained a style uniquely their own. The sea was their lifeline, their protector, and their mystery. Even in their myths, the sea looms large. Poseidon, god of waves, is said to have sent the bull that began the legend of the Minotaur. Imagine now, dear listener, the island as it must have appeared in the early Bronze Age. The hills are alive with terraces of green, dotted with whitewashed homes. Smoke curls upward from hearths. In valleys, markets bustle, filled with pottery painted in swirling designs. Along the coast, ships are drawn onto beaches, their sails drying in the sun, their hulls tarred with pitch. In the palaces, labyrinthine structures of many rooms, frescoes gleam with colours of red, blue, and gold, depicting dolphins, lilies, and dancers leaping over bulls. Crete is alive, vibrant, humming with energy. And yet, around and beneath all this activity, there lingers a sense of mystery. The Minoans left behind, writing Linear A, but it remains undeciphered. Their voices, their words, their prayers are silent to us, preserved in symbols we cannot yet read. Their religion, though glimpsed in goddess figurines and sacred symbols, is still not fully known. Were the horns carved into stone altars symbols of cattle, or of the moon, or of something deeper still? We do not know. Crete gives us fragments, glimpses, whispers, but not the whole. This balance between what we know and what we imagine is part of Crete's enduring aura. It is both history and myth, both evidence and dream. The land itself carries this duality. Walk among its olive groves, and you see trees that have stood for centuries, some perhaps rooted in soil once trodden by Minoans. Climb into its caves, and you stand in chambers where offerings were made to powers unseen. Sail along its coasts, and you follow the same routes that once carried Minoan ships outward into the world. Close your eyes now and picture yourself upon a Cretan hillside. The sun is warm, the air filled with the scent of thyme and wild oregano. Below you, the sea sparkles, its surface bright with endless light. Around you, the mountains rise, their slopes rugged, their peaks sharp against the sky. A path winds upward toward a cave, cool and shadowed. Another path descends toward the sea, where sails ripple in the breeze. You stand between them, between mountain and sea, between shadow and light, between history and myth. This is Crete, the island that gave rise to the Minoans. It is a land of contrasts, of abundance, of mystery. It is a stage upon which Europe's first great civilization walked, leaving behind ruins and stories that endure like echoes. To understand the Minoans, we must begin here in the soil, the stone, the sea, and the myth of Crete itself. Chapter 2: The Rise of the Minoans. From the fertile valleys of Crete and the endless expanse of the sea, the Minoans began to shape a world that was unlike any other. Around 3000 BCE, as small communities gathered into larger settlements, the first traces of their civilization emerged. Over the centuries that followed, they transformed Crete into a center of art, trade, and culture so distinctive that it is still remembered as Europe's first great civilization. Their rise was tied closely to the sea. The island's position placed it at the crossroads of trade routes connecting Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Aegean islands, and beyond. Minoan ships sailed outward, their sails bright against the horizon, carrying goods that revealed both abundance and skill. From Crete came olive oil, wine, honey, and finely crafted pottery, its surfaces painted with swirling designs of octopuses, spirals, and flowing waves. In return came gold, ivory, and exotic materials that enriched their workshops. Through this exchange, the Minoans absorbed ideas, but they always made them their own, shaping a culture both cosmopolitan and uniquely Cretan. At the heart of their civilization were the palaces. Unlike the fortress-like citadels of the Mycenaeans who would later follow, Minoan palaces seemed built more for gathering than for defense. Knossos, the most famous, spread across several acres, a labyrinth of rooms, corridors, and courtyards. It rose in tiers, its walls painted with frescoes, its columns tapered elegantly from top to bottom, their colors bold with red and black. From its grand staircases to its storerooms filled with pythoid giant jars used for oil and grain, the palace reflected both abundance and complexity. Other palaces like Phaistos, Malea, and Zakros shared this sense of openness. Their central courtyards suggested a focus on ceremony, on community, on life lived together. Storerooms, workshops, and living quarters revealed a society that was organized and prosperous. The palaces were not only administrative centers, but also cultural hearts, where rituals, festivals, and performances took place. To stand within their ruins today is to feel the echo of laughter, the rhythm of dance, the hum of voices gathered in celebration. The art of the Minoans captures the spirit of their rise. Frescoes discovered on palace walls depict scenes of astonishing vitality, dolphins leaping joyfully through waves, lilies blooming in bright clusters, dancers leaping over charging bulls in feats of daring and grace. The figures are fluid, their movements alive, their colors vivid even after millennia. Unlike the rigid art of some contemporaries, Minoan painting feels light, playful, and full of motion, as though the people of Crete celebrated the beauty of life itself. This sense of joy extended into their craftsmanship. Pottery was not merely functional, but adorned with swirling patterns of waves, flowers, and sea creatures. Seal stones, used to mark ownership or identity, bore images of animals, ships, and sacred symbols. Jewelry crafted in gold sparkled with intricate detail, testifying to both wealth and artistry. Everywhere, there is evidence of a people who saw beauty not as luxury, but as an integral part of life. Religion, too, was central to the Minoan world. Though much remains uncertain, evidence suggests a reverence for goddesses, for the power of fertility, and for the cycles of nature. Small figurines of women with raised arms or serpents in hand have been found, their forms both symbolic and mysterious. Horns carved from stone, often called the horns of consecration, appear across sites, their meaning debated, but always suggestive of the bull, an animal sacred to the Minoans. Caves and mountain peaks served as sanctuaries, linking the human to the divine, the earth to the sky. It is here that myth begins to blur with history. Later, Greek stories remembered King Minos, who ruled at Knossos, and the labyrinth built by Daedalus to house the Minotaur. Though the labyrinth is myth, the palaces themselves, with their countless rooms, twisting corridors, and intricate designs, may have inspired such tales. To walk among the ruins is to understand how visitors from later times could imagine being lost in their depths, how a palace might become a labyrinth in memory and myth. The bull, too, stands at the center of both culture and legend. In frescoes, young men and women are shown grasping the horns of a bull and leaping over its back, in a ritual both athletic and symbolic. This bull-leaping ceremony may have been a rite of passage, a festival of strength and grace, or a sacred act honoring the gods. Whatever its meaning, it is an image uniquely Minoan, bold, dynamic, celebratory. When the Greeks later told of the bull sent by Poseidon, of the Minotaur born of human and animal, they were weaving myth from the threads of Minoan symbols. What makes the rise of the Minoans so extraordinary is not only their achievements, but their character. Unlike many civilizations of the Bronze Age, there is little evidence of war or fortification in their early centuries. Their palaces lack walls, their art depicts no great battles. Instead, their focus seems to have been on trade, ceremony, and beauty. Whether this reputation for peace is entirely accurate remains debated, but the impression they left is one of openness rather than conquest, of connection rather than isolation. As their influence spread, Crete became a beacon of culture across the Aegean. The Minoan style of art, architecture, and ritual appeared on nearby islands, in towns across the Cyclades, even on the Greek mainland. To the people of the Bronze Age, Crete must have seemed a place of wonder, rich, artistic, and powerful. For centuries, the Minoans thrived, their ships carrying their presence across the sea, their palaces glittering with colour, their myths already seeding themselves in the imagination of those who would come after. Close your eyes now and imagine standing in the courtyard of Knossos at the height of its glory. The sun shines upon red columns that rise elegantly into the air. Frescoes gleam with images of dancers, bulls, and flowers. The air is filled with sound voices chanting, drums beating, perhaps the bellow of a bull beyond the walls. Around you, corridors twist and turn, leading into chambers where storerooms brim with oil and grain, where priests prepare rituals, where rulers sit in shadowed halls. The palace hums with life, every corner alive with presence. The rise of the Minoans was a rise into mystery. They created beauty that endured, power that spread, stories that became myth. And yet, they left us questions, unanswered languages unread, rituals unknown, meanings only half glimpsed. Their civilization shines like sunlight on water, clear in its brilliance, elusive in its depths. The Minoans rose with the sea, with the land, with the gifts of Crete, and from their rise, Europe itself took its first steps into civilization. Chapter 3: Life and Culture. To understand the Minoans fully, we must step beyond the grandeur of their palaces and walk softly into the everyday rhythms of their lives. For though Knossos and Phaistos gleam in memory, it was in the markets, workshops, and fields that the pulse of their civilization truly beat. The people of Crete lived in harmony with both land and sea. Farmers tended terraces carved into hillsides, their olive trees shimmering in silver-green waves, their vineyards heavy with grapes ripened beneath the Mediterranean sunday. Grain grew in fertile valleys, harvested with sickles of bronze, stored in great jars that lined storerooms deep within the palaces. Shepherds guided flocks of sheep and goats across rocky slopes, their bells chiming softly through the air. From these animals came wool for weaving, milk for cheese, meat for feasts. The land sustained them, and in turn they honored it through ritual and art. Artisans shaped the wealth of this land into works of beauty. Potters turned clay upon their wheels, their hands steady as they created vessels both practical and ornate. The Kamara's ware of early Minoan culture, bowls and jars painted with delicate white and red patterns upon black, spoke of both imagination and skill. Later, marine-style pottery blossomed, its surfaces alive with octopuses whose tentacles sprawled across curved forms, with dolphins leaping, with waves curling in endless motion. These designs were not mere decoration. They reflected a worldview where nature, especially the sea, was ever present. Metalworkers too left their mark. From bronze, they forged weapons, tools, and ornaments. From gold, they crafted delicate jewelry, necklaces of tiny beads, pendants shaped like bees or lilies, rings engraved with scenes of ritual. The Minoans valued beauty in the smallest detail, a reflection of their joy in life's abundance. Their homes, though less monumental than the palaces, carried a quiet elegance. Built of stone and mud brick, often with multiple stories, they had windows to let in light and small courtyards where families gathered. Walls might be painted with simple frescoes, floors paved with smooth stone, water systems channeled fresh springs, and even drainage was carefully managed, a sophistication that speaks of comfort as well as necessity. To walk through a Minoan town would have been to see narrow streets alive with colour, sound, and fragrance, the chatter of markets, the scent of herbs and cooking, the gleam of painted pottery drying in the sunday. Religion flowed through every aspect of their lives. Though much remains uncertain, it is clear that the Minoans honoured the cycles of nature and the presence of divine forces within it. The most prominent figures in their art are women goddess-like forms with bare breasts, raised arms, or serpents entwined in their hands. These images suggest reverence for fertility, for renewal, for the mysteries of life and death. Sacred symbols appear again and again. The double axe, or labyrinth, often carved into stone, the horns of consecration, echoing the sacred bull, spirals and rosettes that may have held cosmic meaning. Worship often took place in natural settings rather than temples. Caves, cool and echoing, were sites of offerings where pottery and figurines were left for unseen powers. Mountain peaks, too, became sanctuaries where rituals connected the people to sky and storm, to sun and wind. Within palaces, shrines, and altars suggest a blending of daily life and devotion, where the sacred was never far from the ordinary. Festivals brought these threads together in communal celebration. Music and dance were central to Minoan culture, and frescoes depict lines of dancers, hands joined, moving in circles. The bull-leaping rituals, whether sport, ceremony, or both, must have been vibrant spectacles, filled with the rush of movement, the gasps of onlookers, the daring grace of athletes. In such moments, religion, art, and life itself converged into a single expression of vitality. The Minoans also developed writing, though it remains one of their most enduring mysteries. The earliest script, known as Cretan hieroglyphic, appeared around 2000 BCE. Later came Linear A, a more refined system of signs pressed into clay tablets. These texts record transactions and inventories, the practical details of administration. Yet, because Linear A has never been deciphered, we cannot hear their voices directly. Their prayers, their poetry, their thoughts remain locked within those symbols, waiting still to be understood. This silence only deepens their mystery. Trade connected Crete to the wider world, and through it, Minoan culture reached distant shores. Their pottery has been found in Egypt, in Syria, on islands across the Aegean. Egyptian records speak of merchants from Keftiu believed to be Crete bringing gifts of bronze, pottery, and textiles. In return, the Minoans brought back ideas, motifs, and materials, blending them seamlessly into their own creations. Their art absorbed influences but never lost its distinct character. They were both connected and unique, a civilization open to the world yet rooted deeply in their island home. Life in the Minoan world was not only about work or worship. Their frescoes show scenes of leisure, young men boxing, women gathering flowers, dolphins leaping in joy. These images suggest a culture that valued beauty and vitality, that saw the world as something to celebrate rather than merely endure. Unlike the martial imagery of other Bronze Age societies, the Minoans left us few depictions of war. Instead, they painted life fluid, vibrant, and full of motion. And yet, even within this flourishing, shadows linger. Natural disasters, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions were part of life on Crete. Palaces were rebuilt more than once after destruction. The sea that brought wealth could also bring storms. Life here was abundant, but it was also fragile, lived in balance with forces greater than any human hand. Close your eyes and imagine walking through a Minoan town at dusk. The streets are narrow, lined with stone houses. Lamps glow in windows, their light flickering across painted walls. From a courtyard comes the sound of music, pipes and drums, voices raised in song. In another, a family gathers around a hearth, the smell of bread baking in the air. The sky above is deep with twilight, and stars begin to emerge one by one. The town is alive, yet peaceful, held between sea and mountain, between myth and reality. This was Minoan life, rich, joyful, sacred, mysterious. They lived close to nature, close to beauty, close to the rhythms of the earth. Their culture was one of connection to land, to sea, to spirit, to each other. In their art, in their architecture, in their rituals, they left behind a legacy that still speaks, even across the silence of centuries. The Minoans remind us that civilization is not only about conquest or power, but about creativity, reverence, and the simple joy of being alive. Their world, though long vanished, continues to shimmer like sunlight on the sea, bright, elusive, and unforgettable. Chapter 4: Myth and the Labyrinth. The Minoans left behind palaces, frescoes, and objects of beauty, but they also left behind something less tangible: stories. Not their own words, for their language remains undeciphered, but the echoes of their memory carried forward by the Greeks who came after. Out of those echoes, out of ruins half forgotten, grew myths that have endured for thousands of years. At the heart of those myths lies the figure of King Minos. According to legend, he ruled Crete from the palace of Knossos. His name became inseparable from the island, so much so that we call this whole civilization Minoan. Yet whether Minos was a single king, a dynasty, or simply a later memory, we do not know. What matters is the story told in his name, a story of pride, of divine judgment, of the labyrinth and the creature that haunted its depths. The myth begins with the sea god Poseidon, who sent Minos, a magnificent bull, to be sacrificed in his honor. Minos, struck by its beauty, could not bring himself to kill it. He kept it instead, hiding it among his herds, and offered a lesser animal in its place. Poseidon, angered, punished him by causing Persephone, the queen, to fall in love with the bull. From that union was born a creature both human and beast, the Minotaur, with the body of a man and the head of a bull. Ashamed and fearful, Minos turned to Daedalus, a master craftsman, to build a prison that could contain the creature. Daedalus constructed the labyrinth beneath Knossos, a maze so vast and intricate that none who entered could find their way out. There, in its twisting passages, the Minotaur was hidden, its roars echoing in the dark, its hunger fed by sacrifices of youths and maidens sent from Athens as tribute. The story continues with Theseus, Prince of Athens, who volunteered to end the terror. With the help of Ariadne, Minos' daughter, he entered the labyrinth. Ariadne gave him a thread to unwind as he went, so that he might find his way back. Deep within the maze, Theseus confronted the Minotaur and slew it. With the thread as his guide, he returned, victorious, ending the sacrifices and bringing hope to his people. This tale is one of the most famous in Greek mythology, a story of courage, sacrifice, and the triumph of human will over monstrous force. But beneath its surface, it also carries the memory of the Minoans themselves. The labyrinth, though mythical, may echo the great palaces of Crete, especially Knossos, with their countless rooms and corridors that could easily confuse a visitor. The Minotaur, half man and half bull, may reflect the Minoan fascination with bulls, their bull-leaping rituals, their horned symbols, their art alive with images of the animal's strength and vitality. The story of Ariadne and her thread, too, may preserve something of Minoan ritual. Ariadne was remembered in later times as a goddess-like figure associated with fertility, renewal, and the cycles of life. The thread she offered to Theseus could symbolize guidance, continuity, the path through chaos to clarity. Her presence reminds us that the myths of Crete were never only about monsters, but about the sacred feminine, about wisdom, and the power to navigate life's labyrinths. Other myths surround Minos as well. Some told that, after death, he became one of the judges of souls in the underworld, weighing the deeds of mortals. Others spoke of Daedalus and his son Icarus, imprisoned by Minos for their role in aiding Ariadne and Theseus. To escape, Daedalus fashioned wings of feathers and wax. Together they took flight, but Icarus, overcome with joy, flew too close to the sundae the wax melted, and he fell into the sea. Daedalus escaped, but the story remained a tale of brilliance, hubris and loss, tied forever to the Cretan king. These myths blur the boundary between memory and imagination. They are not literal history, yet they preserve fragments of truth. Through them, we glimpse how the Greeks of later centuries saw the Minoans not only as a people of wealth and artistry, but as a civilization touched by mystery, by the sacred, by forces both awe-inspiring and dangerous. Close your eyes and imagine standing within the ruins of Knossos. Corridors stretch before you, narrow and twisting. Stairways descend into shadow. Doors open into chambers with faded frescoes, their colors still glimmering. It is easy to feel lost, to sense the weight of stone pressing in, to hear in imagination the faint echo of hooves, the breath of something waiting in the dark. The palace is no monster's prison, yet it carries the essence of the myth, a labyrinth of stone where past and story intertwine. The bull, so central to the legend, was clearly sacred to the Minoans. In art, it appears again and again charging, leaping, standing proud. The act of bull leaping, captured in frescoes, shows youth grasping horns and vaulting over the animal's back, a daring dance of danger and grace. Perhaps this inspired the image of the Minotaur, the bull as both revered and feared, as both sacred and perilous. The Greeks, seeing these symbols in the ruins or hearing of them through memory, may have transformed them into the tale of a beast hidden in a maze, fed with human sacrifice. Yet the labyrinth is more than prison, it is symbol. Across cultures, the labyrinth represents the journey of life, the winding path toward understanding, the movement through confusion into clarity. In this sense, the myth of Theseus and the Minotaur is more than story, it is metaphor. The monster we face is not only external but internal, the fears and challenges that dwell within us. The thread of Ariadne is the wisdom, the love, the guidance that leads us through. The labyrinth of Knossos is also the labyrinth of the self, a journey each of us walks in our own way. The Minoans, whether they knew it or not, left behind a landscape perfect for myth. Their palaces, their symbols, their rituals all carried an air of mystery, of depth, of meaning beyond the ordinary. The Greeks, inheriting fragments of their memory, wove them into tales that still captivate us today. And in those tales, the Minoans live on not only as a vanished civilization, but as a presence eternal, echoing through labyrinths of stone and imagination alike. As night deepens, imagine yourself in the labyrinth, not of stone, but of dream. Corridors stretch endlessly, twisting and turning, shadows pressing close. Somewhere ahead, a thread glimmers faintly, guiding your steps. You walk slowly, breath steady, heart calm. At the center, the Minotaur waits not beast, but challenge. You face it, and in facing, you find strength. With the thread in hand, you return, emerging into moonlight, into silence, into peace. The myth of the labyrinth is not only the story of the Minoans, it is the story of all of us, the search for meaning, the courage to face darkness, the guidance that leads us home. Chapter 5: The Great Collapse. Every civilization, no matter how vibrant, carries within it the seeds of change. For the Minoans, whose ships once crossed the Aegean freely and whose palaces gleamed with colour, the end came slowly at first, then suddenly. Their collapse remains one of the great mysteries of history, a puzzle of nature, power, and silence. The story begins with the earth itself. Crete lies in a region of shifting tectonic plates, where earthquakes ripple through the ground and volcanoes rise from the sea. For centuries, the Minoans endured these forces, rebuilding palaces after quakes toppled their walls, restoring frescoes when stones cracked. But around 1600 BCE, an event occurred that changed the course of their world: the eruption of Thera on the island now known as Santorini. The eruption of Thera was among the most powerful in human history. Entire portions of the island were blown away, leaving the great caldera we see today. Ash rose high into the atmosphere, spreading across the Aegean, darkening skies, and falling upon distant lands. Tsunamis surged outward, their waves striking the coasts of Crete and other islands, sweeping away ships, ports, and fields. The roar of the earth and sea would have echoed across the region, a sound of both terror and awe. For the Minoans, who lived so closely tied to the sea, the disaster must have been devastating. Ships lost meant trade routes broken. Fields buried in ash or flooded by salt water meant harvests ruined. Ports damaged by waves meant isolation. The very lifeline of their civilization, the sea that had carried them to wealth and connection, now turned against them. And yet, the eruption alone did not end the Minoans. For decades after, they continued, rebuilding their palaces, maintaining their culture. Knossos still thrived, its frescoes painted anew. But the blow had weakened them, left them vulnerable, disrupted the delicate balance that had sustained them for centuries. Into that vulnerability stepped other forces. Earthquakes continued to shake Crete, toppling walls and crumbling storerooms. Fire left its mark on ruins, blackening stones that once gleamed. And from the Greek mainland came the Mycenaeans, a people rising in strength and ambition. Unlike the Minoans, the Mycenaeans were warriors, their citadels fortified with massive walls, their art filled with scenes of battle and conquest. By the mid-15th century BCE, Mycenaean influence spread across Crete. Linear B, a script derived from Minoan Linear A but used to write the Greek language, appears in palace records. The island that had once led the seas was now under new power. Knossos, the jewel of the Minoan world, survived longer than most, but around 1375 BCE, it too fell, its palace burned, its halls abandoned. With its end, the last great center of Minoan culture vanished. What remained were smaller settlements, fragments of life in the valleys and hills, echoes of a civilization that had once shone brightly across the Aegean. The exact reasons for the Minoans' decline remain debated. Was it the eruption of Thera and its aftermath? Was it a series of earthquakes and natural disasters that weakened their foundations? Was it conquest by the Mycenaeans, or a combination of all these? The truth is likely layered, a tapestry of causes rather than a single thread. Nature shook their world, and history pressed upon them until the balance they had sustained for centuries could no longer hold. Yet, even in collapse, mystery lingers. Why did their palaces fall silent so suddenly? Why did their language, Linear A, vanish without leaving behind a translation? Why did a civilization so vibrant, so connected, so artistic, leave behind only ruins and questions? The silence of their end is as haunting as the beauty of their rise. Close your eyes and imagine the fall of Knossos. The courtyards that once rang with music and laughter now lie empty. The frescoes fade beneath soot and ash. Corridors twist into silence, their chambers cold. Outside, the sea still shimmers, but fewer ships sail its waters. The island that once hummed with trade and ceremony now grows quiet, its power dimmed, its voice fading into memory. And yet, the Minoans were not entirely lost. Their symbols, their stories, their influence endured. The Mycenaeans who conquered them absorbed elements of their culture, their art, their symbols, even perhaps their myths. When the Greeks later told of King Minos, of Ariadne, of the Labyrinth, they were preserving in legend what history had left in ruin. The Minoans may have fallen, but in story they survived. The collapse of the Minoans is not only a tale of loss, it is a reminder of fragility, of the ways civilizations depend on balance between nature and culture, between sea and land, between resilience and vulnerability. It is also a reminder that what is beautiful can endure, even if only in fragments. The ruins of Knossos still rise, their stairways leading upward, their frescoes glowing faintly with color. The myths of the Labyrinth still captivate us, carrying echoes of Minoan ritual. The island of Crete still holds their memory in caves, in hills, in stones warmed by the Mediterranean Sunday. As night deepens, imagine yourself standing among those ruins. The air is cool, the stones beneath your feet rough and ancient. Around you, the walls rise in fragments, windows opening onto sky. You close your eyes, and the silence of the ruins fills you not empty, but full of memory. You breathe slowly, deeply, and feel the weight of centuries pressing gently upon you. The Minoans are gone, but they are not forgotten. Their collapse may remain a mystery, but their presence endures half history, half legend, eternal in its allure. Chapter 6: The Legacy of the Minoans. For centuries after their fall, the Minoans lay hidden beneath layers of soil and silence. Their palaces crumbled into hills of stone, their frescoes faded, buried beneath earth and ash. Their language remained unread, their rituals unremembered. To the Greeks who rose after them, they were not history but legend stories of King Minos, of the Labyrinth, of Ariadne's thread. For millennia, the Minoans existed more as myth than as memory. It was only in the early 20th century that their world emerged again. An English archaeologist, Sir Arthur Evans, began excavations at Knossos in 1900. What he uncovered astonished the world. Beneath the Cretan soil lay the sprawling remains of a palace labyrinthine, vast, its walls adorned with frescoes still bright with colour. Dolphins leapt across painted waters. Women in flowing skirts danced and leaped. Bulls charged, and athletes vaulted above them. Here, Evans declared, was the palace of Minos, the labyrinth itself brought to light. Evans gave the name Minoan to this civilization, tying it forever to the king of myth. His reconstructions, sometimes imaginative, sometimes controversial, brought the ruins to life in the public mind. He painted columns in vivid red and black, rebuilt staircases and rooms, restored frescoes to glowing brilliance. Some criticized his methods, saying he blurred history with vision. Yet his work ensured that the Minoans were no longer forgotten. They stepped once more into the world's gaze, their artistry and mystery captivating all who looked upon them. Since then, archaeologists have uncovered other palaces at Phaistos, Malea, Zakros, each revealing new facets of Minoan life. Thousands of clay tablets inscribed with Linear A and Linear B were found, though only the latter, adapted by the Mycenaeans, has been deciphered. Seal stones, pottery, tools, jewellery all emerged, each a fragment of daily life, each a piece of a puzzle that still remains incomplete. With every discovery, the Minoans grew clearer, yet their mystery deepened. The legacy of the Minoans is not only archaeological, their influence seeped into the culture of ancient Greece. The Mycenaeans, who rose in their wake, absorbed much from them: artistic styles, religious symbols, perhaps even elements of their myths. The sacred bull, the goddess figure, the labyrinth all appear in Greek stories, transformed yet recognizable. The Olympian gods too may carry echoes of older Minoan deities reshaped through time. In this way, the Minoans live on, their spirit woven into the fabric of Western civilization itself. Their art has left an indelible mark. Unlike many Bronze Age cultures, the Minoans celebrated not war, but life. Their frescoes show nature, dance, and ritual rather than battle. Their figures move with fluid grace, their animals leap with joy, their flowers bloom with vibrancy. This vision of the world as a place of beauty, of harmony, of vitality continues to inspire artists and dreamers today. To stand before a Minoan fresco is to feel life captured not as stillness, but as motion eternal. Their myths, too, endure. The story of the labyrinth has become universal, a metaphor for journeys inward and outward, for trials faced and overcome. The Minotaur is not merely a beast of legend, but a symbol of the shadows we each confront. Ariadne's thread remains a symbol of guidance, of connection, of hope. These myths, born from Minoan soil and memory, still speak to us, reminding us that the human journey, whether in Crete 4,000 years ago or in our own lives today, is one of courage, challenge, and light found within darkness. The Minoans also remind us of fragility. Their fall was sudden, their voice silenced, their language unread. Their ruins remind us that civilizations, no matter how radiant, are vulnerable to forces beyond their control: nature, time, conquest. And yet, they also remind us of endurance. Though their palaces crumbled, their art, their symbols, and their myths survived. The Minoans live on not only in ruins and artifacts, but in the imagination of all who dream of them. Close your eyes now and picture the island of Crete today. The ruins of Knossos rise in the sunlight, their columns painted red, their stones warm beneath the touch. Visitors walk among them quietly, their footsteps echoing in courtyards where once dancers leapt and kings ruled. Beyond the ruins, olive groves stretch across hills, waves crash upon rocky shores, goats graze on mountain slopes. The same landscape that nurtured the Minoans still endures, carrying their memory in every stone and tree. The Minoans' legacy is not only what they built, but what they left us to wonder. They are a reminder that mystery can be as powerful as certainty, that unanswered questions can inspire as deeply as solutions. We may never decipher linear R. We may never know the full truth of their religion, their rituals, their daily lives. But in their silence lies beauty, a space for imagination, for dreaming, for listening to the echoes of a world both real and mythical. Their story is not only history, it is a lullaby of time, a reminder that civilizations rise and fall, but their whispers remain. The Minoans, though gone, still speak in ruins, in myths, in the waves that break upon Crete's shores. They remind us that life, even when fleeting, can leave behind a radiance that endures. As night draws closer, let the thought of the Minoans carry you into rest. Imagine their palaces glowing with torchlight, their courtyards alive with music, their frescoes bright with color. Imagine the labyrinth, not as a prison, but as a dream, winding and turning until it leads you into peace. The Minoans wait there still, guardians of Europe's first great civilization, keepers of both history and myth, their legacy eternal. Chapter 7, Closing Reflection, Whispers of the Labyrinth. The story of the Minoans is one of beauty and mystery, of a people who lived 4,000 years ago on an island embraced by the sea. They built palaces that dazzled with color, crafted art that celebrated life, and told stories that grew into legend. They thrived in harmony with the land and sea, creating Europe's first great civilization. And then, just as swiftly, their world fell silent, left in ruins, remembered only in whispers, carried forward as myth. To walk through their history is to wander through a labyrinth of memory. Each turn reveals something new, a fresco alive with dolphins, a pot adorned with spirals, a story of a king and a monster, a thread that leads us home. We glimpse their rise, their joy, their rituals and mysteries. We feel the tremors of their collapse, the shadow of volcanoes and earthquakes, the weight of conquest. And yet, at every turn, the Minoans remain elusive. Their words are still unread, their gods unnamed, their lives half seen through fragments. Perhaps this is their greatest gift to us, that they remain partly hidden, for in mystery, the imagination finds space to dream. The undeciphered script, the labyrinth of corridors, the myths of Minos and Ariadne, they invite us not only to know, but to wonder. The Minoans teach us that history is not only about answers, but also about questions, about the silence that lets us listen more deeply. Their story reminds us of fragility. Civilizations, no matter how radiant, are vulnerable. Nature can shatter what seems eternal. Time can wear away the strongest walls. Yet it also reminds us of endurance. Though the Minoans vanished, their beauty remains. Their frescoes still shine, their symbols still inspire, their myths still echo. They live on in the foundations of Greece, in the imagination of the world, in the quiet dreams of all who listen. Imagine now, standing at the edge of the palace of Knossos as the sun sets. The air is warm, the stones beneath your feet ancient and rough. Before you, the ruins stretch like the outline of a memory, their walls broken, their corridors open to the sky, and yet, in your mind's eye, they live again. Torches flicker on painted walls. Music rises from a courtyard where dancers leap and circle. A bull charges, and a youth vaults gracefully over its back. The labyrinth breathes, alive with color and sound. You stand within it, part of its dream. As night falls, the palace grows quiet, the music fades, the frescoes dim, the labyrinth stills. What remains is silence, soft, profound, filled with peace. The Minoans are gone, but their whispers linger, like the hush of waves against the Cretan shore, like the faint shimmer of starlight on the sea. Dear listener, let those whispers guide you now. Let the labyrinth unfold within your mind, its corridors winding gently, leading you not to fear but to rest. Follow Ariadne's thread, light and steady, as it draws you deeper into calm. At the center, you find not a monster, but silence, warmth, and safety. The labyrinth is your dream, your journey inward. The Minoans, guardians of Europe's first civilization, invite you to rest here with them. Their story is complete, yet eternal. Their voices are silent, yet their presence is endless. As you drift into sleep, carry with you their gift, the reminder that even what is lost can still shine, that beauty endures, that mystery is not emptiness, but invitation. Close your eyes, breathe slowly. Let the waves of Crete's shores wash gently through your mind. Let the labyrinth fade into darkness, its paths quiet, its heart still. You are safe, you are at peace, you are cradled by time itself. Sleep now and dream of the Minoans. Dream of palaces glowing in torchlight, of dolphins leaping in painted seas, of Ariadne's thread gleaming in the dark. Dream of a people who celebrated life, who walked between history and myth, who left behind whispers that still call to us across 4,000 years. And as you dream, know that you are part of their legacy too. For to remember them, to listen, to wonder, that is to keep them alive. Good night.